So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to kick off. If I can ask you, Michale, to move to, thanks, Notobeko. Just a little of an introduction. If we move on to the next slide, we're going to look at really what we are going um, to expect. But first of all, I just want to speak about SADAR, because people often say to us, well, you know, what is SADAR and what does SADAR do? Well, essentially, we unlock boardroom performance. And why? Because we understand that a high performing board often drives and builds and evolves into a very high performing and effective business. So we essentially equip business leaders collectively and individually. And why the term SADAR? I don't know if many of you know, but the SADAR is a lead Sherpa. It's the name given to a lead Sherpa in a mountain expedition. And if you think you're going to climb Kilimanjaro, for example, you can wear the shoes in for 12 months at a time. You can do all the exercise and the climbing of other mountains. You can be fully prepared and feel that you are now ready to climb to the peak of Kilimanjaro. But when you get to the bottom, to that base camp, who walks with you? Not in front of you, not behind, but walks with you. That's the SADAR, your lead Sherpa. And their reason is to ensure that you get to the top of that mountain, and not only to the top, but back down safely again. And that's what we do in terms of being a SADAR. It's being able to support you and achieve the challenges that you set out for yourself and that you have. So the SADAR builds the right team, chooses the correct route, and knows when to go for the summit. So having said that, I am very excited to introduce to you, and if we can go on to the next slide, that's fantastic. Well, what to expect, first of all. But a welcome, we're going through that. Housekeeping rules, we don't have many. It's not that we have to worry about phones or anything else. What I will say is that we have got a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the conversation today. So please make notes of your questions. Don't forget to then ask us at the end. We're very interested in that as well. We're going to go through the panel introduction. We're going to look at the anticipated outcomes, and I think that'll be interesting to hear of yours as well. So pop them in the chat when we get there. Our discussion, audience Q&A, as we mentioned in a poll, and then the exciting and exclusive complimentary offer for you, and then thanks. So let's kick off. First of all, I would, and it gives me great pleasure, to introduce Lyle Clark. Lyle, please raise your hand and say hi. So Lyle is the Chief Executive Officer of Twiza. Now, Twiza is a household name. It is a family-owned entity and a true South African success story in terms of business, through growth and through all else. Lyle, I've known for a good many years now, actually, from the sort of early days of board discussions and so forth. And he's going to be sharing today firsthand how profiling has transformed and impacted their organization. Karen Ravik, say hi. Hi, Karen.
Hi, everyone.
So Karen as well, fantastic, highly engaged contribution campus manager, is involved with their partners from UK to USA to South Africa and further afield. She's going to reveal the secrets to unlocking team dynamics. And myself, Bev Hancock, I'm a partner, SADAR. I head up the appointments from board appointment side. I've been involved in executive search and recruitment for many years. So I come with understanding contribution campus as well and the power in it. So I'll be offering insights into the strategic impact of profiling at board level. So thank you very much. All right, let's kick off. I'm actually going to first look at the anticipated webinar outcomes. And please pop into the chat here if there is something specific that you want to walk away with today. What we've got is we've put in there being able to foster that you should be able to foster decision-making flow for high-performing teams at every level. All right. Are we making decisions and good decisions? How does that work and how does that flow? Maximizing the contributions and returns of individuals and teams throughout the business. Be able to build a board that really thrives with aligned composition and board effectiveness. Revolutionize your appointment process for directors and for executives. And in fact, I would take that further right through all functional teams. It's something that we utilize at Sadar as well when we're going through appointment process. Supercharging your onboarding and your team engagement, and being able to provide information and the thinking around to also add depth and strategy to your board diagnostics. This might be when you want a snapshot and understanding of, are your board ready? Is your board actually effective? And how do we say we have good governance, but let's look at the governance and the implementation thereof, as well as really adding depth and a lot of strategy around your annual board evaluations, if you've got a formal board and you're running your board evaluation there. And then also be able to plan your business's future with purpose and precision. So if there's anything else that you want to add in, let's trust that we will be able to support you on that journey as well. All right, so thank you for that. So if we want to set the scene, and I think this is the important part, is being able to sort of understand where we're at and what we're doing and why we're here. I would like to ask, if I may, Karen, profiling often feels, I don't know about everyone else on this call, but profiling often feels very theoretical for many people. Can you briefly define what Contribution Compass is and help us understand the science behind Contribution Compass and why it's so effective for actually unlocking individual and, importantly, team potential?
Cool, thanks, Beverly. So profiling isn't a new term, and I think we've all heard about profiling. Some people haven't even heard about profiling at all. And there are many tools out there that are extremely amazing at self-awareness and identifying who you are and what makes you you. What Contribution Compass is not a personality profiling tool. So there are a lot of tools out there that tell you, whether you're an introvert or extrovert and what your likes or dislikes are. Contribution Compass focuses specifically on your natural energy. Now, natural energy does sound a bit like airy-fairy, but it's not. Basically, what it is what you are naturally good at with a focus on in the workplace. So we all have learned behavior or skills that we learn throughout our life. We go and study at university and we go to specific jobs and we learn a lot of things. But sometimes we kind of do what we think we are good at or what someone tells us that we are good at. But what Contribution Compass is, it's a breakdown of 4 energies that you have in your natural energy. So Mohale, if you can please put up the Contribution Compass profile. I'll show you now. So everyone is made up of 4 energies. We've got activating, inspiring, sustaining, and refining. And some people will be naturally more activating or more sustaining and more refining. But the point is that when you unlock your Contribution Compass profile, you're able to identify what you are naturally good at. So if there is a critical moment, which is like a stressful moment in a business, how you would react in that moment. And the reason why it's so important is because, I think everyone's heard the phrase like, he showed his true colors or she showed her true colors. Is business already is extremely highly pressured. And when you want to add value to the business, you must do what you're naturally good at. And what happens is, if you do what you love and what you enjoy and what you're naturally good at, there's less chance of you burning out, which means that you are going to be more effective in the business. And secondly, it's all time-based. So anyone that is effective in one area spends less time getting the same outcome. So for Contribution Compass, we believe that you should spend more time on what you enjoy doing as opposed to on time where there's energy wasters and where you feel burnt out. And what happens is if organizations make sure that everyone is in the right role with the right profile, then generally they get a maximum contribution to the organization with a very less time wastage and more happier and productive employees.
Thank you. That actually makes very fine sense, and we appreciate the input. So thank you for that. Lyle, from your experience at Twizzler, and you were looking at Contribution Compass, what were your initial challenges and profiling actually? What were your initial challenges oh, sorry, I'm busy sort of thinking ahead there. You've witnessed transformation firsthand at both board and within the business. So could you share an example of how a profiling tool like Contribution Compass has shifted your organization's approach to leadership and to team dynamics, and actually how understanding your own Contribution Compass profile has impacted your personal and or business life?
Cool. Bev, thanks for having me. Excuse me. For those on the call that don't know who Twizzler is, we are manufacturers of carbonated soft drink, and we have 3 facilities around the country, and I'm a second generation family business leader. And my journey with Contribution Compass has been quite interesting. There's 3 main areas that I'd say it's had a major impact on us, and I'd probably talk more about my team now than our board. At an organizational level, I think the biggest impact is organizational design and recruitment, and I'll touch on where I think that's quite effective. The second one is just general self-awareness of myself as a leader, and then the third one is using the information from the profiling as a leadership tool. Now, on the organizational design piece, I'm sure a lot of you can agree that success requires right people, right seats, right things. And when I first did the profile for our team was quite conductor heavy. So that meant we were quite efficient, but we lacked creativity, agility, and people-centered leadership. So what that did for me is it helped me identify what kind of energies were missing from our team. And when I was planning going forward, what I needed to look for in recruiting. So when my head of manufacturing left us, he was a conductor. I replaced him with a coach, and this boosted team engagement, which was great. When my head of HR left, she was sort of more of a custodian / connector. I replaced her with a catalyst, which I was desperately missing. And having an HR lead driving innovation and adaptability was huge for us. So this shifted our entire team's sort of strengths and execution to be more innovative, people-centric, and future-ready. So that's been quite positive. The second one was self-awareness. So I have a conductor profile. My energies are quite balanced, fortunately. And that's actually a bad thing to say. There's no right or wrong profile. My secondary strengths are calibrator and cultivator. And that's reinforced how I think about my leadership, but also shown me some blind spots. So I thrive on efficiency, but I overanalyze. So I rely on my activating energy in my team for balance. I have high standards, but this often leads to me possibly burning out my teams and possibly having expectations that are unrealistic, and I rely on the connectors and coaches in my team just to slow me down quite a bit. I have a high energy, so I've had to learn to create space for quieter voices to make my leadership more intentional and inclusive. So that's been great. On the leadership front, I mean, a key takeaway is just understanding who's in your team and what their natural energy profiles are. So my head of manufacturing, my current guy, is quite an abrasive, no-nonsense guy. And ordinarily, when you engage with an individual like this, people think they'd like to limit their interactions. But if you look at his profile, he's a strong coach, and he thrives on engagement and not distance. And this has totally transformed the way that I deal with him. I engage him more directly, ensuring that he gets the connection that he needs to perform, and I've got a good response out of that. So really what the profiling has helped me with, it's helped me see beyond surface behaviors, and this ultimately has improved my leadership and the performance of the team.
That's fantastic, Lyle. Thank you. I think that was very comprehensive and gave a clear understanding in terms of a practical nature on the ground, the impact. And I think so many people, including myself, before I started using a powerful sort of individual and team profiling tool, understood the real change that can come from this. And you know, something I was going to speak to was about how often leaders, and whether it be a board or a C-suite or your functional teams, actually often misunderstand. What do they misunderstand about team synergy if you look at business today? And how can profiling resolve those challenges? And I think you've actually spoken to much of that, because it is about team synergy and understanding oneself and how does a team engage and how does a team make decisions. Because often we find that there's an assumption that if you hire or put together the most talented or the most highly qualified people, if you put them together, they're automatically going to be a high-performing team. That's going to be the result. And the reality is that is not true. Because synergy is not just about skills or about qualifications. It is how people contribute, how people communicate, and how they actually complement each other in terms of their strengths and their weaknesses. So it's a multi-layered effect. And you mentioned in terms of decision-making, etc. And often we find that if there are too many individuals in a room that think alike and there's no debate and so forth, and you know, there's no activating or any other energy in the room, you can often get blind spots in decision making, because groupthink can allow for that as well. So it's how are we balancing ourselves? How do we understand ourselves? And how do we recognize the signs when we are going down a path, either as an individual or as a team? So it is about balancing the team dynamics. So thank you for that. And speaking of being practical, let's dive into some practical strategies. So for Karen, could you share some practical steps for integrating profiling into business and starting from the boardroom to operational teams? And I'm going to lead on from that. So if you can sort of also look at how businesses can ensure alignment between the natural energies of board members and the organization's strategic objectives. Thank you for that.
Okay, cool. Well, you know, it's a journey with Contribution Compass, and I think the best way is obviously to integrate it in your business from the start. And one of the key ways of doing it is first to obviously profile all your existing staff members, or you could start with, say, you just want to start with the board initially and then take it into the rest of your staff to see, you know, what the profiles are. But the reason why we like to profile all of the team members for HR or for the CEO directly is to check a couple of things. So the first thing is to probably see, is the person's role and profile complementing each other? Are there any red flags in the sense, has this person been burnt out recently? They don't seem happy in their job. Is it because they are currently doing something that they're not naturally good at, and it's something that we've given as a job description? So it's amazing, because you don't want to lose employees if they're already in your organizations and they're loyal. You could possibly shift employees around. So it's really important to have that idea or summary of everyone in your company, so you can look at that. Secondly, one of the most important things is to share this with as many people as possible. And the reason why I say it, and especially like Lyle said, the minute you know what your team member is, it makes it easier for you guys to meet halfway in terms of communication. So it really makes you understand your team members better in terms of communication. So what to communicate with them and how to communicate with them. So I, for instance, know that if I'm speaking to a champion who is my director, I'm going to get to the point, and I'm not going to go into too much detail that I normally do, because I can go into way too much detail and analyze and carry on. I know that I've got to now be conscious of the fact that when I'm communicating with a champion, that I meet halfway. As with the champion will know, you know, Karen's quite detailed. I'm going to expect a few questions from her that are a little bit detailed, but let's meet halfway and let's get on track. The nice thing about also understanding the profile, each person's profile, it's not only about communicating better and to understand what their natural energy is, but you also identify how you can teach them to learn better. So for instance, activating energies only see in pictures. You know, inspiring energies are all about audio and visual. Sustaining energies are all about on-the-job training, or let's do it together. And the refining energies are, give me the manuals, give me the stuff so I can read through it, and then I'll come back to you. So it's really important, even when you're on board new staff, or when you're wanting to explain something to someone, is that even in a group setting in the organization, you touch on all 4 areas when you are training employees, so that you can kind of get all the energies involved. Another thing that's quite important is when you learn about the different energies of people, you also know how they will be rewarded better. So some people love to be, you know, rewarded in certain ways and others not in other ways. Some people want to be the center of attention. You call them up and you know, this is the way that you do that type of reward. Everyone is very different. And the thing is it allows you to kind of tweak and change the way that you treat the individuals, so they actually don't just feel like, you know, just staff or everyone's treated the same. You're able to tweak and change based on that. And if you do that, it's really, really important, because it will help you to identify a lot of strategies when you do eventually want to look at team reports. So another way of integrating it is if, for instance, the board wants to see how balanced they are. It's really critical for boards to be balanced. Some teams might not be especially balanced if they're all working together in the same discipline. But if, for instance, there is a board, it is extremely important that you look at if there is a gap in a specific area. So if I can show you this current team profile summary in front here, you can see this is an extremely balanced board, which is, you don't often get this. This is peak flow. I was very surprised when I did this, and I did this as a test between my husband, myself, and my brother-in-law. And I said, oh, we better open up a business here, because it looks like we peak flow. But it's good to know. And even if we were no flow, it's not to panic. It's to know the blind spots and to say, okay, if we are going to bring in a new board member, let's make sure that we bring in someone that has a little bit more activated energy. Like Lyle said, he had a very high conductor team report, team profile. And for him, he knew the best thing to do is to not panic. You know, you can still be in flow, and you can still be conscious, and you can still challenge each other in the boardroom discussions to say, guys, have we asked enough what? Have we asked enough who? But as you grow the board, is that you can tweak and change it so that you can balance it effectively. So I think another thing that is really important, if you want to integrate it as a practical tool, is now that you've profiled your organization and all your employees, you profiled your board or your exco, and you make sure that everything's quite balanced, is to make sure that when you onboard or you bring anyone else into the organization, you use a free tool that we have, which is called the contribution identifier. And what that is it basically asks you 24 questions on the role that you're looking at hiring. And what that will give you is the perfect or the most complementary profile for that specific role. And once you get that, you are able to write the job advert, you're able to shortlist and do everything based on that profile, so that you can attract the right person or profile to the role. And you can also make sure that you are conscious that they are stepping into the role that they are naturally good at, and that's their natural energy. So I think those are the key ones to do. I would say step one is definitely first profile everyone. Step two, look at the big decision makers or exco board, see if it's balanced or not. And then step three, as a recruitment process going forward, make sure that you identify the role and the profile required for that role.
Thanks for that, Karen. That makes perfect sense. And you actually mentioned something there that is also something to bear in mind, because absolutely at board level and certainly at C-suite, you want to have a well-balanced entity. But there are going to be times where in your sales division, there's going to be a key level of energy that you're looking for. So you're going to be looking for high activating and high inspiring, and there's going to probably be an imbalance. But that's an intentional imbalance, rather than an unpleasant surprise sometimes if it's the wrong energies we're looking at. So you're absolutely correct there. Thanks for that. And Lyle, from your experience at Twiza and having gone through this process, what were for you the initial challenges in implementing Profile? Because it isn't always sunshine and roses. And how did you overcome them?
Yeah, thanks. So family businesses, obviously, when you first take the step to hire non-execs at board level, one, it's quite a financial consideration. And then two, because you are laying out the money to have these voices at the table, you want to make sure that you're having the right voices at the table and that there aren't any voices missing from the table. So when we did the contribution compass profile for our board, this gave us insight as to what we were missing, and this helps with sort of medium to long-term planning, which is useful. Obviously, there you have to look a bit longer term. Rolling it out of our team, there are different challenges. So I think the most obvious challenge is resistance to change. There's a preference for a familiar way of working. So what we really tried to show was try to showcase some quick wins. You build a bit of momentum and you get buy-in. I think another key hurdle to overcome is everyone gets a profile, and you have to avoid this perception that you boxed in to a certain profile and that you can't lean into any other energy. So really their education was quite important, giving each other insight as to how we can leverage each other's strengths, where we need to support each other, and that like just obtaining an understanding that striking the balance is a key and critical enabler for success. So for us, those were probably the two biggest challenges. I personally think sometimes you are at risk of just confirmation bias. You think a certain way and then you want to go look for the answer in the profiles, and so I think you got to be wary of that, to be honest. Try let the information lead you. But yeah, we're not perfect, but we're certainly more aware and performing better as a team as a result.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the difference. And one of the points you briefly made there was, not to feel boxed in. The reality, you aren't boxed in. No one's putting you in a box. It's that, there is secondary, there's learned behaviors. And sometimes you can operate efficiently for a period of time, but at some point that's going to slip and break. And so it's about making sure that you are in the right space and place for you, and being able to utilize who you are and what you have. So I think one of the things for me was, and coming on from that, was an example that we've seen in business, and how it shifted thinking. And one was, I worked with a senior leadership team, very young in terms of all. Probably, I think the person had been in the entity 2 years was the longest. They'd gone through a lot of change, with GMs and different approaches and so forth. And they were focused, they were passionate, they were all those good things, but they were struggling as a team. And I think what we did, we came in, there was lots of personalities, lots of divisions, and having to work together and so forth. And so by coming in and being able to for the team to understand what their natural energy and their profile was and how they behaved and how they made decisions, and how the person that they were engaged with, often in a high intense environment, how that person engaged and made decisions and how they worked together. By understanding that, it brought a lot to the conversation and a lot to Fluidity moving forwards. So that made a very big difference, just with that team alone, and being able to understand where they stood as a team and how they could move forward together. So that was just something that I thought of along the way as well. And Karen and Lyle, please jump in. You know, it's a conversation at any given point. So loving the conversation. I hope everyone here is enjoying it as much as I am listening to Karen and Lyle. You know, we've looked at the practicality, we've looked at the start, but I think looking at broader impacts, you know, how would it impact your business, where you are, and so forth. So Karen, let's talk about bigger picture. How does harnessing team and individual energy create, and this is important, measurable business results? And can you share a success story?
Yeah, cool. Thanks for that. That's actually it's a nice one to always answer, because I think what's key about Contribution Compass is we believe in meaningful economic impact. And that's exactly what it creates for businesses. Is firstly, it's meaningful because people are doing what they love and loving what they do. So there's less employee turnover, there's less time wastage. And then the secondly is obviously is the fact that it takes less guesswork out of the organization, and you make faster decisions. So it's all about basically reducing time and improving happiness, creates meaningful economic impact. So those are the two areas that I think has a ripple effect on a lot of things, which is basically a lot of it is turnover, but a lot of it is also employee satisfaction, you know, looking at operational efficiencies. It just really does transform the business. And I think one of the key things that I always find is, especially with an entrepreneurial business, and there was an entrepreneurial business where obviously, funny enough, entrepreneurs always start off as a catalyst. They are amazing at coming up with great ideas. And I dealt with someone that was, wasn't very self-aware because he hadn't been profiled before. So he obviously got profiled. But the magic that it did in terms of transforming the business, because firstly, he was able to see what his blind spots were, firstly. And secondly, as soon as he got to understand all his team members, it created this amazing openness and feedback and rapport that was just amazing. And he was more accommodating to the fact that he knew that he couldn't be everything to the business, even though he had a very, very square profile. I mean, you can only cut yourself up into so many pieces, but you need to kind of let people do what they are good at. And I think what we've got to be careful, and why it was great, is when he used the Contribution Compass tool, is that when he was hiring for the next person to come in line, or, you know, or to assist him, generally we always hire, or we interview, and we like people that are like ourselves, because you can't naturally irritate yourself. So basically, he was always hiring people that he got on with, or that he thought was thinking the same way that he did. And what it did was it challenged him to basically completely get someone into the business that was completely different to him. And in the Contribution Compass, actual compass, you'll see that there's obviously the 8 profiles. And generally, if you are building a business, if you're a one-man band, the best is to do a skip 1, skip 2 strategy. So basically, you skip 1 profile. So if you're a catalyst, you'll skip 1 profile, get a coach first. And then next, you'll skip 2 and you'll get a cultivator. So it's a really great way of building the business going forward. But also, it's an amazing way of actually challenging yourself when you are, and this is what the CEO or the entrepreneur was experiencing, is challenging himself when he's thinking a certain way and saying, you know what, I need to bounce this off a custodian. I need to actually get a custodian into play, because anyone that is on the opposite side of the compass thinks completely differently to you, and it'll create more balanced decisions. So yeah, I think obviously meaningful economic impact, and also being open, the openness to accepting flaws, and I wouldn't call them flaws, but areas that you aren't naturally good at, and not taking yourself too seriously in certain instances, understanding that there is an area that you're good at, and there are things that you can laugh at, and there are ways that you can accommodate everyone as a team and include the team building.
Thanks very much for that, Karen. Appreciate that. It makes very good sense in terms of being able to move forward, and when you are using the tool, what to look at as well. Lau, from your leadership perspective, how has, and we're going to look at team synergy again because it's very important, is how has profiling supported not just team synergy, but also the decision-making process at the board and the executive level, and potentially even functional teams, if you want to go into that. I mean, would you say this has added another level of understanding?
Yeah, Bev, certainly. And if we could put up that last slide again, it's quite useful. I quite like Karen's analogy of her strategy around recruiting. So where I've ended with my team is we've got 3 conductors, 1 catalyst, 1 coach, a connector, and a custodian. So we like to think that we are balanced, sort of, but our team profile is that we are custodians. So we honor the promise, we deliver, which for me is actually, particularly in the family business, is ideal. So in acknowledging that team profile, I realized very quickly that it was extremely important to be very clear on the strategy from a 5-year perspective, articulating what everyone's role was in that strategy, and trying to gain alignment early on what we need to deliver long term. And that really drives strong alignment through the strategy and execution process. And that I sort of trusted that given our team profile, our team will self-correct as needed during execution, because that's what our profile was. What I've also realized is that if you're doing new projects or new products, the teams not only have to be cross-functional, but have to have the right energy. So if you have too many blues on a project, you're going to have the most amazing product, but it's never going to get to market. If you have too many reds, it's going to get to market very quickly, but the quality is going to be poor. So that has been quite interesting for me, and sort of just making sure you've got the right people on the project teams. And we've seen success in just getting things done quarter by quarter, being extremely focused. And it's amazing, whenever I feel the team just slightly losing course, we just come back to the strategy, which we all gain alignment on, and that kind of auto corrects us. So that's been quite interesting, and a good support to me.
Fantastic, thank you. And how have you found inserting this into the board diagnostics, you know, when you're looking for a snapshot of where your board actually sits now, or doing an annual board evaluation? Has that created another level of impact and understanding?
Okay, I mean, I've talked with 2 hats now, but I mean, as leaders and sort of representative of shareholders, I think it's important that you gather as much information to inform board design, organizational design, and decision making as possible. And I certainly feel that the Contribution Compass is a powerful tool to raise awareness. I'm not punting Karen and the team here, but it's extremely affordable. You know, for the amount of money that you get, for the cost that you pay for an assessment, it's actually quite ridiculous, the benefit that you get. So I'm not telling you to raise your prices, but what it has allowed us to do is I've sort of profiled the top 50 leaders in our business, and had team profiles of, you know, of teams 2 below us. You know, and when a certain team is struggling, and sometimes it's good to go to the profile. So for example, we had a struggling sales team, and you see that their leader is extremely low on inspiring energy, which was critical for the region. So that's helped us reorganize. It's not that the person is a bad person, is just possibly in the wrong seat. So that's been extremely informative. I think it definitely enhances long-term planning. It helps you structure teams more strategically. So my advice is just, you know, just start. Gaining perspective can only help, can only the more information you have, the better leader you are able to be.
Absolutely agree with you. And I think before we go into the Q&A, because I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions, but if I can ask both of you one key takeaway, Lal, practical advice from a board and business perspective. What should attendees act on immediately?
Look, if you haven't done it with your team, I don't think you can assume you fully understand what really drives them. So profiling uncovers how people think, make decisions, and how they perform at their best, often in very unexpected ways. So before I implemented it, I misjudged certain team members, assuming they preferred less engagement or a different leadership style, and understanding their natural energy profiles actually completely changed the way that I lead and communicate. It's not just about roles. It's about unlocking potential, and the sooner you do it, the sooner you'll build a more effective, high-performing team, in my opinion.
Agreed. And I think something that I find with this profiling tool is that, and when you're aligned with partners such as ourselves or whoever you're working with, is that there's very good feedback, because often you get a report and you read this and you either as that individual don't really understand what it means, or your senior gets it and doesn't really know what it means. So it's being able to there's good feedback, so you understand, you actually get a very good understanding. And often, with providing a short feedback session, someone will say, oh, but I didn't think this was my profile. And then you read through it and you go through it and you discuss what that profile speaks to and how it works, and why that person came up as they did, and they go, now I understand. And that is such a high value, because you see there's insights that you didn't actually realize in yourself before. Sometimes it's clear. I'm a coach profile. My refining energy is quite frightening, but it's balanced in the other areas. And when I am in meetings or in a team, it's about how do I balance that? And I think that's what you can take into any situation almost. Much value there. And Karen, from your side, please, insights again, but insights into getting started with profiling. How would one go about it? I think Lyle actually referred to this. It can be a challenge when you first get involved.
Yeah, I think a key thing is to definitely get firstly to understand yourself first, and get self-acceptance. And I think the minute you get that and you understand where the value you're going to add into the organization, and you understand that, yes, you might want to go and do you might be a catalyst energy, but you've got extremely high refining energy. So you want to sit and do the spreadsheets because you want it to be perfect in that area of the catalyst space. Don't do it, and take a step back. So it's actually taking a step back and making sure that you understand your profile and you understand what you are currently doing that is not benefiting the organization. And the minute you accept yourself for who you are and you understand that you can't do everything and you need to bring in other people that are going to do the work for you, that is going to be one of the biggest game changers ever. Secondly, also not boxing everyone into into a specific profile. I mean, I've learned profiling through and through over the years as I've been working with Contribution Compass. I mean, I would hope I would be able to read people. But even if I've spent a week with someone without them doing their profile, I don't always get their profile right, because people do mask and people do a lot of things in order to fit in with the business or the culture or what their learned behavior is. So obviously getting them to also understand their profile is critical, and having a proper debrief, I think, is the important part. Not everyone's going to read their profile. Some people are going to just look at it and be like, yeah, that connects with me. Generally activating, inspiring energies don't read too much. But it's really, really important to sit the team members down and say, we value this about you. We want you to do more of this because you are good at this. And just like when you came home from school, And hopefully not all parents were like this, and my parents weren't, but a lot of people, used to bring their report card home from school, and their parents used to say, oh, you got an A in this. Oh, great. Okay, but why did you get a D in maths? We need to improve on that. And it's about celebrating what you are good at and working on the things that you aren't, but spending 80% of your time in the area that you are, because that will improve motivation. It will basically just transform your organization. So I think that self-acceptance, valuing people that are different energies to you, as opposed to fighting with them, and focusing on the good and the value that the people can bring in their profile, as opposed to trying to get people to do or think the way that you are. I think that's very critical.
Very powerful. Thank you, Karen, because that is so true. And I think that almost speaks to, if I was looking at a takeaway, was for everyone here, everyone listening and joining us today, is to go back into their business, into their home, into their teams, and start listening as to how do people make decisions? How do we react? If we're in a team, if I go to one meeting and there's 6 people in a room, and it's so risk averse, the energy is we're not coming up with ideas, we're going to really play it safe, we're going to do this. And you can walk out and walk into another meeting and you find a different energy. There's so much activating energy in the room that potentially there's all these ideas flying around and no one's asking the hard questions. Indeed, no one's bringing in that sustaining energy and going, all right, but who's going to do this and how are we going to do it? And that's when you start looking at your teams differently and you start thinking differently about, is this really an effective team? And how am I contributing to that place and space as well? So, that's just a little thought to take away. And I think now, because we're time-wise, and so thank you, Lyle and Karen, and let's stay on. Let's see what questions we've got out there. So we're going to open up the questions. Please do ask us, pop into chat, any thoughts that you've had listening to this and going, but this is a moment that I experienced and now I understand why scenario. There's one, Lyle, here for you. From Anthony, did you look for non-execs for the board that balance out the profiles of your executive team, i.e. were there gaps in the profiles that you filled?
Yes, most certainly. So my most recent appointment was my my head of HR, and I realized we had no red energy, and I was interviewing 4 different people, each with very, very good backgrounds, all performed very well in the interview. But I made my choice because she was a catalyst. The other profiles were coaches. I had another blue and another green, and I just knew I didn't need those energies in my team. So I recruited her because she was a catalyst, and it's made an incredible impact on my team. So you're on mute, Bev. Sorry.
I thought those days were gone, but no, I can still pull that party trick out. Absolutely. And so yes, you do start looking at how do we, when we say well balanced, we start looking at the fact that it is about the energy in the room, and it is about how do we work together. So very important. Anyone else got any other questions or observations or anything that you were hoping to take away today? We're going to ask you here. There's a poll as well, and I think this actually will be able to, we'd appreciate this, and we have a good understanding of where you're coming from as well. Thank you for this. So if we can complete that. So I must say, Karen and Lyle, the fact that there's not too many questions is fantastic, because I trust that we've been able to answer a lot of what you were wondering today on the call. And I think what we'd like to do, though, is we've got something very special for you. Oh, yes, good question. And Karen, I'd like to actually ask you this. This is from Kosi. Is profiling for life? Is the profiling for life? Good question.
Yes. So that's actually a lovely question. And a lot of people are like, how many times must I do my profile? And the answer is you do your profile once. Your natural energy is your default button, the way you're made. Obviously, it's something that doesn't change. The shape of your profile could change slightly in the sense of learned behavior and what you've been exposed to in various jobs. But the thing is that if you do a profile, you do it once, because the first time you do it, you are absolutely 100% unaware of what the questions are. You answer completely honestly, and you get the profile, and it's always, we've never really had anyone that's done it and said, oh, this is not me at all. It has urged people to think about it, but when we do the debrief, which I said is so important, the debrief is so important, is when you start unpacking it with a person, you start asking them questions, you see that this is who they are. This is who they are. And I mean, I actually did a debrief with someone the other day that came out as a conductor, and she was like, you know, this is so weird. I see I'm a conductor, and I mean, I get it, but I also I like people. And I was like, okay, that's great, but would you want to see people every single day, and do you want to manage people all the time? No. And then as you unpack it, they start, like, the light bulb starts flashing. And then I say to her, when you've got a son, right? She's like, you always want. I'm like, do you read all the instruction manuals, or when you put things together? And she's like, no, I have to. My husband just tries to wing it. And I say to him, stop that. We need to read the manual. I'm like, well, there we go. There's another conductor energy, or the refining. So it's all those aha moments that come up, but it is you, it is for life. Yes.
Yeah, and I think another one here is, and this is interesting, this is from Anthony. If a person fits into a certain profile, should there be a personal effort to broaden into other profiles? You are you, Anthony, but I'm going to let Karen pick that up.
So I like this phrase that I don't even know. I just always say to everyone that obviously you need to self-acceptance and your natural energy, and that's great. And you should do most of what you're naturally good at. Okay. But life is not Disneyland, and a job is not Disneyland. You are going to have to challenge yourself in areas that you aren't good at, and learn new skills and meet halfway with certain people. And I don't know if that's answering your question, but you do need to broaden into other profiles. So I know for a fact, as and I've become better at this because of blind spots, but when I was working in an advertising agency a few years ago, I was the killjoy in the brainstorm, because as soon as these catalysts and these amazing people came up with ideas, I was like, but guys, that's not going to work. How's that going to work? How? And they used to want to quit on me because I was asking those questions too soon. So what I learned is to embrace the catalyst energy, enjoy it while we're in it, write down my questions if I have to, but also to learn from them, to learn that sometimes you've got to do big picture thinking, and you've got to, do that type of thing, and read books about that, and, expose myself to those areas or profiles that are different to mine. But obviously to do most of what you do in your natural energy. So I don't know if that answers the question that you ask.
Yeah, it's actually,
it is hard.
It is hard, and it is about learned abilities. So I mean, I'm someone who, I'm not going to sit and spend hours doing financials. I will ask for the financials because I want to understand strategically where everything fits in and how to make decisions. But I know it's not my strength, but you also learn. So you learn to read, you learn to do all of that. And that's so you can add that depth into that whole refining space. And also in what you do, you will find in your role, there's certain things that you will become absolutely like pedantic about and want to make sure it's detailed and focused, even if it isn't your natural energy, because it is what works in that space and you want to see the outcome. So I hope that does help. I think, Lal, this one I wouldn't mind throwing at you is profiling for unskilled labor. Would you look at profiling in across the board? Having seen the results that you've seen across your teams, what would you do?
Look, there is cost benefit. Also, I think retention in unskilled labor does, if you are churning 10 to 15% of your workforce every year, might not be useful to do profiling because the results will change quite a lot. I've only rolled it down to middle and junior management. I've mostly rolled it down to I think decision making can be influenced, sort of inflection points in the business, because that's where the real benefit is going to come. But I don't have a good understanding of what your business may look like. So who's that in Tobacco? So I think it differs for everyone. I do have a slight view on the profiling for life. I'd love to see, Karen, some some research, I do find that the older generations, once you get experienced individuals getting into their 50s, 20, 30 years experience behind them, they naturally start gravitating towards a coach connector type profile. So I've seen that quite a lot. And then somebody asked, should you try, be something that you're not? I also think it's good to challenge yourself, but I also do think it's better to focus your energy into what you're good at and making sure that you're in the right position to maximize your strengths. And also just there is no wrong and right profile. It's I think that's something we have to accept as well. You are, and the challenges can we put you in a position where you can shoot the lights out and really see how amazing you are at your best.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I know we need to be moving across now. We're at time end. And I know, of course, you had one question, a quick one, Karen, if you can answer this before we go on to the special offer. Kwasi asked, how does Contribution Compass work with business or personal values?
So I think it's separate. I think everyone, you could have the same profile and you could have completely different values. It also depends on your life stage. It depends on your upbringing, a whole bunch of things. So I don't think they're linked. I think that certain profiles value certain things that are quite common. So like custodian energies value time. They value efficiency, whereas coaches value relationships. There are some high-level stuff where there will be shared values, but other values, when it comes to work culture and the values of the organization, you do need to use the profile and see whether the person is also a fit in terms of the culture of the organization. Because if you're going to have a culture where people value hard work and you've got to work late hours and you've got to finish your work before you leave, and someone's in a phase in their life where they're valuing family more than business and they're kind of just using the job as a, then it's a different ball game altogether. So you do need to touch points with values, and emotional intelligence are two things that I do encourage people that are interviewing with Contribution Compass to also tap into and ask a few questions to see if they fit in with the company and whether they think the person is emotionally mature as well, which can be picked up in a few interview questions.
Yeah, I must agree. I don't know, Lau, what you said, but I agree with that, because when we go through the whole appointment process, I always call it you peeling back the onion, and you're starting with the core values of the business, and are they aligned? And then you're looking at the natural energy, and you're looking at the skills, and you're looking at the qualifications. And as you unpeel the onion, you start seeing and bringing out that profile. And is that a good fit? And will they be able to really focus and drive themselves and evolve in that role? If we may, I just want to first, before we give you your complimentary, and Karen's going to dive into that. Lau, thank you. Appreciate it.
No worries.
And thank you so much. Invaluable today. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope everyone here has thoroughly enjoyed it. Karen, if I can ask you please to, in fact, Mogale, if you can just put that on screen, please.
Yes, cool. Do you want me to just give an overview to everyone that's on the call?
Yes.
So obviously we are in the giving mood, and we feel like self-awareness is the best gift that you can actually receive. So if you would like a complimentary profile, anyone that is on this call, please pop a message to Bev or Mogale, we'll get a complimentary Contribution Compass profile to you, and this will obviously help you to understand your natural energy in the workspace. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. So speaking of that, if you can go to the next slide, Mogale, my details are there. You will have our contact details, and so you've got my beverly@sadargroup.com. Please do contact me. We'll work together to make sure that you get this. I think it's highly insightful. I hope that you've seen today how insightful it is. And thank you everyone for joining us today. Appreciate your comments, appreciate the chat, appreciate your questions, highly valuable. Thank you, Lau. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, everyone.